Shadow of the Colossus, one of my favorite games of all time, as most of you guys know, has been remade from the ground up by Bluepoint Games on the PS4. I was able to put aside PUBG for a little bit and finish off this game last night, and I want to talk about some things. Does it hold up? Does it fix some of the issues the original had? And is it one of the best remakes of all time? Let's talk about it. What is going on, guys? Randall419, back again with another video. And really quickly, I wanted to give my history about Shadow of the Colossus. It was the last game I played on the PS2 when it came out in 2005, and I didn't play another PlayStation game until I got the PlayStation 4. So I have a lot of fond memories. The nostalgia for me with this game is absolutely huge. I love this game despite the issues it had back in the PS2 era. You know, bad frame rate, bad camera controls, wonky main character controls, etc., etc. So I wanted to see, was Bluepoint going to change a lot of that stuff and update it for the modern era? And some of it they did, and some of it they didn't. But this game, I'm happy to say, is still truly a masterpiece. And if you're interested in the title at all, you should check it out. But let's go into my thoughts, right? So if you don't know, Shadow of the Colossus is a story about a man that wants to revive his lost one. You play as the Wanderer. He brings his girlfriend or wife to this kind of desolate but beautiful land and asks this disembodied voice to bring her back to life. And of course, the disembodied voice says, "I will, but you have to do something for me." And the thing he wants the Wanderer to do is destroy the 16 idols that are represented by the 16 Colossuses or Colossi that roam these lands. And you have this sword which pinpoints the location of each Colossi, and the basic gameplay loop is find the sword, use the sword, find the location of the Colossi, ride across the gorgeous looking scenery, get to the Colossi, figure out how to get onto the Colossi, and then it's a pretty simplistic and repetitive gameplay loop. Some would say extremely repetitive, but the way the game varies it up from Colossi to Colossi is staggering, because the sense of scale that you get in this game is completely unparalleled. The very first time you take off on Argo, your horse, who still has the same terrible AI controls that she had or he had back in the PS2, it's still there. You run across this beautiful looking but empty world. I mean, I did kind of take time to take in the sights, the bright green grass, or the empty desert, or the lush forest, but there's really nothing in there to interact with. But that's okay, because that's kind of part of what makes Shadow of the Colossus so great. It's this land that is just large but empty, and it's empty for a reason, except for these Colossuses. But that first time you see this gigantic Colossus, who is hundreds, if not thousands of your size, and your task is to somehow bring down this beast. Back in the day, this was like unheard of. It was a game that had never been done before. It was so unique. And Bluepoint did a fantastic job representing and bringing back that scale for this gen. The game has never looked better. The Colossi have never looked better. Their movements, when they lumbering along the ground, smashing onto, one step after another, or one of them with their huge club just using that huge wind up, and you just see it coming down and just shaking the earth. Your task is insurmountable. You have to take down these huge things. But at its core, Shadow of the Colossus is a puzzle game, because the idea is you have 16 boss battles. And sure, the first 3 or 4 of the Colossi battles are pretty much tutorials. It's pretty easy to figure out how to get on the Colossi. That's the main gist. First step, after you find the Colossi, after you ride off in the direction that it's in, is to figure out how to get on the Colossi. Now, the first one's pretty easy. You just jump on its leg fur. Oh man, the fur on those legs, they look really, really good. And each of the Colossi have a weak point that you can stab to drain its energy. So as you are holding on to the Colossi for dear life, you pull back your sword and jam it in. It feels wrong to a certain extent. Yeah, the music playing is fantastic. It gets your blood pumping, right? When you're climbing the Colossi and that theme kicks in, you're like, I'm going to take this sucker down. But when you finally get to the last hit point marker, you drive the sword in, which feels wrong. And all of a sudden, that action-y theme goes away, and it's just this theme, this music of sadness, and the way the Colossi are framed as life leaves them and they fall to the ground. It's so tragic, and you begin to realize, wait a minute, are these the monsters that I think they are? Is this game trying to subvert my expectations? What is going on here? That is like the true core of the game, is figuring out how to get onto each of the Colossi, and some of them are fantastic. Yeah, sure, you'll have the slow lumbering Colossi in the beginning, but you have ones that fly. You have ones that are underneath the ground that periodically come up. There's so many different types of Colossi, which really helps out the gameplay element, because some of them require very different things to get onto to kind of start that game of holding on for dear life, you know, waiting for the right moment to use a fully charged strike to jam your sword into their weak spot. But everything about this game still holds up, and of course you guys know I played the game in 60 frames per second. Despite how awesome the game looks in 1440p, I did switch back and forth, but I couldn't just pass up them frames. You know I had to have them frames. But everything about this game is just amazing. It's still truly a masterpiece. Of course, the game still has its flaws. Most of it carried over from the previous release on the PS2. The camera can still be a little bit wonky when close to certain objects. Your character, the Wanderer, still, even though they have modern controls, it's still a little bit wonky. He still kind of glitches out here and there when clinging for dear life on the butt hair of a Colossus. But I think that's kind of intentional. But I wanted to mention that. What else? The world is pretty empty. There's not much to do other than go pray at shrines, maybe find some fruit on some trees, find some lizard tails to increase your stamina and health and all that stuff. So for most people, it's just going to be, you know, find the Colossi, get on the Colossi, kill the Colossi, rinse and repeat, and move on to the next thing. There's not a lot of, yeah, you can gawk at the scenery, but there's really nothing to do. There's no NPCs to talk to. Nobody has a side quest to give you. Your mission is just take down the 16 boss fights in that order as they give them to you, and that's it. But, man, just reliving this game, considering it's been 13 years for me, I have not played this game in 13 years, a lot of this game seemed incredibly new to me. I didn't remember certain Colossi, so when I was fighting them, it was like I was fighting them for the first time, remembering how to take this gigantic Colossi down, whether it was, you know, getting him positioned underneath a gushing geyser to flip him over, or, you know, having one of these smaller Colossi ram into a certain structure the right way to expose his weak point. It all just felt so great, and I'm so happy I was able to relive this game with modern graphics, modern performance, modern controls in this day and age. And I recommend this game to anybody. I mean, it's $40. It's a great price. If you've never played Shadow of the Colossus before, now's the time. Of course, not everybody's going to like the game, so that's up to you. I understand people that, you know, have their complaints about there's nothing to do and it's very repetitive. But for me, the music mixed with the visuals, mixed with the puzzling elements of how to take down each of the Colossi, and the beautiful kind of sadness that you get when you do, when it makes you think about your actions and what you're trying to accomplish in this game, it's truly a remarkable experience, and I recommend Shadow of the Colossus to anybody that has never played it. If you have a Pro, obviously I recommend you play it on 60 frames because, as everybody knows, 60 frames is just better than 30 frames, baby. That's just how it goes. But as a score out of 10, considering this is one of my favorite games of all time, and the remake is up there with any remake done in any generation, I still have to give this game a 9 out of 10. And it's going to be a tough call if I'm going to include this game in my Game of the Year discussions, because at the end of the day, it is just a remake of a game that came out in the PS2 era. I'm not sure it would be... Maybe I'll give it an honorable mention. But regardless, this is one of the best games ever made in my opinion. And I had an absolute blast replaying it. Maybe I'm going to go back and replay it on hard mode, because there are 3 difficulties you can choose from. There's time trials and everything, that give you different equipment. I mean, the game is kind of meant to be replayed a whole bunch of times, but that first experience, the first time seeing the Colossi, figuring out how to get up onto him, and ending his life, and feeling sad about it, there's no other kind of experience like that for gaming for me, and I can't praise this game enough. So if you have a PS4, you owe it to yourself to at least check out Shadow of the Colossus. So I give it a 9 out of 10, and we'll see if I'll include it in my Game of the Year discussions. But anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed the review. If you did, make sure you hit that like button. Consider subscribing to the channel for more content, and I'll see everybody in the next video. Later.